Hi again, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, June 5th, 2025, and the Santa Barbara community was saddened this week to learn of the passing at age 93 of Barney Brantingham, the great newspaper columnist who became a local icon by writing a real-time history of the town, pounding out countless columns day after day, year after year, decade after decade. And in reflecting on what Barney meant to Santa Barbara, we thought it would be appropriate and cool to hear from some of his colleagues and friends who worked with him in the newsroom all those years. So I'm honored and delighted to welcome an all-star lineup from the news press diaspora for a kind of impromptu online open mic night, a gathering of the tribe for Santa Barbara journalism to share some stories and memories of working with this great journalist and great man. Because of various commitments, folks will be dropping in and out, and some will have to scoot quickly after speaking. So, with thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us. I want to introduce them all quickly in alphabetic order, and then I'll ask each of them to say a word about Barney. So we have Cammy Barnwell, who used to cover schools, Tom Bolton, a former executive editor, Melinda Burns, longtime environmental reporter, Raul Hill, IT director, who's not joined us yet, Scott Hadley, investigative reporter, Jane Hulse, city editor, Josh Molina, city hall reporter, Don Murphy, who's former news editor, joining us from the far off Bay Area, so I guess it's taking him a while. Starshine Rochelle, feature columnist, Norah Wallace, North County reporter, Len Wood, photo editor, and John Zant, all-around sports guru. So thanks again to everybody. Star, I'm going to ask you to lead off if you would, and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is so fun to see everybody. What a awesome reunion for a sad occasion. My thoughts on Barney are that, we went out and covered a lot of scary stuff from that newsroom, right? Fires, floods, shootings, stabbings. But the most frightening thing I ever saw during my years at De La Guerra Plaza was Barney Branningham's desk. Do you guys remember that thing? It was a tower. No, it was multiple towers of, newsprint, black and white photos, clips, books, notepads, binders, more newsprint. I was thinking it was the kind of thing you wouldn't have been surprised to see like a small animal scurry out from under. And I really thought he'd be buried in it if a stiff breeze came through the building. But to a new reporter like me, it was more than a fire hazard. It was actually like a visual representation of the thousands of stories that he had told over the years. The countless leads that he'd wrangled with and the sources he'd tracked down and really the outsized impact that he'd had on this community. So I know everybody on this call knows what it feels like. You write something and it goes out there and then it's gone and you never sort of know if anyone read it or even saw it. But this thing, this desk, which he was not ashamed of, which I loved, was like this daily tangible reminder that his work and our work, in fact, was chronicling history. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh, thank you, Star. Thanks. Tom Bolton, what do
Well,
you
thanks for having me on this. And yeah, it's great to see everybody.
got?
And looks like everybody's doing well. I had a couple of thoughts, thinking back about Barney. I gotta say, I admired Barney's approach to stack management. I'm a neophyte at that, but I have my stacks too. So anyway, a couple things about Barney. One is I don't think there's another person, certainly in the news press newsroom, who embraced Fiesta so well. I mean, he absolutely loved it. And those of us who sat through, hundreds of playings of La Bamba, working the night shifts, it's like, oh my God, Fiesta, but not Barney. He was just out there enjoying it, playing it up, writing about it for his readers, and it was kind of amazing. And I think the other thing about it is that was kind of Barney's personality. I was trying to think back, and I can't remember a single time where Barney got like mad about something. And I don't think I could say that about many of my colleagues here. I mean, I think there was always a time or two where, somebody got wound up and, probably for good reasons. But Barney was,
Uh-oh.
and again, it was, I mean, that was sort of his approach to everything. But I don't know, maybe anybody else can remember him actually getting mad, but I couldn't.
Oh, all right. Hey, Tom, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Cammy, what do you got?
Great. Hi, everybody. I miss seeing you all in person. Still really sad that we don't all work together still, but yeah, I had some fun these last few days. I'm sure you all know about newspapers.com. When you go there and you plug in Barney Brantingham and then you localize it by Santa Barbara, 17,000 hits come up. And I was like, well, this is like, maybe it's searching for other things. I started clicking through, starting in 1961, thousands of articles that he wrote. And I saw some of you guys posted some things on social media. I haven't been able to put my words together yet, but I'm starting to feel like I can now. This man was an incredible reporter. I don't know if I remembered this or forgot it along the way, but he started out as like the ace courts reporter, courts crime reporter. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you this guy, he was inside the jails. He was in every courtroom. He wrote every story from every angle. And I just started clicking through and reading these. At one point, I couldn't even get through it all. I had to just pick the ones that ran on the front page, which newspapers.com will tell you where it ran. And I was just having a blast reading how he approached those stories, and his writing style really I admire very much. In my mind now, I kind of have him like the Hemingway of reporters. He very easy to read, very articulate, not a lot of fluff, but man, just the choice of words, just really, really fun to read, and brought his characters to life and these stories. I just couldn't believe it. I highly recommend. I downloaded some of them and I'm going to read them down the road. But he also, in between really covering like the beat like a bloodhound, he was also writing just regular stories, as we all have had to. Like when Jerry introduced us on our beats, we all know we all had to move in and out of so many stories. And he wrote one on February 4th, 1962, about the history of the tradition of giving out cigars following the birth of a child. And his son had just been born, and he was handing out cigars. And knowing the editors at the time, he probably mentioned it to someone, and the editor said, go write that, So he got into the history of why that came to be. It's a beautiful story, and I want to clip it and share it with his family if they haven't already seen it. And then I wanted to get into a little bit of Tom just mentioned Fiesta. I started reading his Fiesta stories, started popping up in like 1963. So I don't know if they're just not on there from before that, or if that's when he branched into covering Fiesta. And then after that, I couldn't even get through hundreds and hundreds of stories. And some of you know that I love writing about Fiesta too. Well, one of the things you should know is Barney became a really dear and close friend. We talked about stories all the time. He was so supportive, and I will call him a mentor for sure. But more than that, like took me under his wing more than once as I was trying to deal with a complex story or maybe a really big life decisions. He's someone who had been around the block a lot and had a lot of wisdom, and I just really considered him a very close friend during that time we all worked together. And then lastly, I was going to say that along with being a really beautiful writer, he was so well spoken that I started quoting him in most of my Fiesta stories because it was like he was the authority on some of these things. And I thought it'd be fun. It's very short. This is a story I wrote for The Independent about romance during Fiesta. And so I interviewed Barney and Sue. And it's very short, Jerry. Do I have like 30 seconds to read this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. This is now the column it's a little vignette. Okay. So longtime Fiesta aficionado Barney Brantingham has written about the celebration for 5 decades. No wonder that he had his own story to share. a romantic turning point one warm fiesta day when he was courting his now wife, Sue DeLapa. Barney was the dashing news press reporter, Sue the paper's trusted archivist and librarian with the sweet smile. Quote, "It was fiesta and hearts were as warm as the afternoon," said Brandingham. Sue looked so delightful in her gorgeous dress that I couldn't resist inviting her for an after-work drink. We settled down at an open-air cafe just off De La Guerra Plaza. Just as we began chatting, I spilled the beer all over her brand new fiesta dress. Sue just laughed. "It'll dry." DeLapa now recalls, quote, "I was having such a lovely time, I didn't mind." Barney said his date's lighthearted nature in that stunning dress made him realize what a gem he had uncovered. Quote, "Today, years later, we're still together and I'm more careful with my beer."
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so I'm going to really miss Barney, and I didn't want to cry or get upset, but he was very special. And you guys are all special to me too, and just miss seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cammy. Yeah. History of handing out cigars. Talk about your slow news days. Okay, we got it. Josh, Molina, what do you got?
Well, I have the distinction of I've seen Barney Brantingham in his underwear, and I'm going to explain this story to you in just a minute. But I want to say when I started at the Santa Barbara News Press, obviously to be able to start at that paper, first, like, real job in journalism, everyone is so intimidating. Like, everyone is so impressive. It's a New York Times owned company. And I remember just being sort of in awe of Barney because he had that name recognition. And I was, you all know me, I was doing my thing. I was quiet. I'm usually not the first person to go to people and talk. And I just kind of was always intimidated by him. And I remember just how impressive he was, that he had this aura around him as he was Barney, the columnist. But he was really also like you don't get hired to be a columnist usually. He had been a cops reporter and a court reporter. And so there was a lot of respect there because if you did go through those yellow envelopes in the files in the morgue, you would see, wow, this guy covered all this stuff for years. And so he was somebody who was very legit. And I was always intimidated to walk to that side of the room. And, he had his desk. And then over time, I got a little more brave and started talking to him. And he was, as Tom said, so centered. Like, he was always kind and polite, and he would offer advice. Like, he would do it not in a way that's like, let me tell you how to do this, but he would offer wisdom in how he approached his story. So he was very helpful to me in our little conversations. And, he was just sort of a legend. And we need that kind of journalism has a palette of stuff we offer people. And he was offering that nuanced insider report of what was happening in our community that was smart. And, you got to write a column 5 days a week, right? That's really difficult to do. And I think that's one of the things we've lost, as as we all know very well about the changes, is that historical knowledge, that wisdom, somebody who knows things and can refer to their own memory of what happened 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so I just remember being sort of in awe of his presence. And then eventually over time, he'd start coming over to my desk and talking to me about various stories. So I felt very honored for that. And he's definitely a role model. When you're a young reporter, you're like, man, someday I'd love to be like that guy where, you just walk down the street and they're like, there's Barney. So he was always setting the bar for that. The other thing, my comment at the top was he and I and a couple of other newspressers went on the USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier. I think Jesse had decided that, Josh, why don't you go do this with these guys? And, you have to land on the aircraft carrier in these little helicopters and you're launched like a catapult. And so we were there 3 or 4 days together. We bunked together. We were on the same room. And, I don't know how old Barney was at that time, but the thing about Barney too is like he was he's a man's man. He was in the army, the military. He was hanging with everybody. I remember huffing and puffing, going up and down the stairs. And Barney was just in great shape and he got along. I guess that's the thing. That's the last thing I'll say is on this aircraft carrier, he could have conversations with these Navy, with these military people, just like he could with me, or just like he could with anyone he met. And that's such a unique skill. And it really comes from that journalism experience where you can just have those conversations easily with anyone because he was so curious, interested, and smart and knowledgeable, and in a way that never made a young guy like me at the time feel second or out of place. And so that's what I remember. And we didn't share military time together, but we did spend a few nights on that aircraft carrier, and that was a great memory for sure. But definitely gonna miss. I already do miss. I didn't talk to him in recent years. But it's just you just can't go back in time, and I think we're all so lucky we don't even know it in the moment. It takes years when you to look back and be like, wow, what an amazing thing we all had. We were able to experience. And that's true for each one of us. Each one of us has that special place in time where we were just so doing things that were so meaningful and impactful to all of us, and then we're just lucky to be a part of it. And Barney was certainly at the top, one of the people at the top of that. So I'll definitely miss him and continue to try to aspire to be something like him in the community.
Well said, Josh.
Thank you.
Although I can't unsee the picture of you and Barney in your underwear now. But
Barney is a stud, Jerry.
all right. Jane Hulse, what do you got?
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see your faces. Since we're all together, maybe we should just put out a paper while we're here. Why not? The thing I remember most about Barney is he loved Santa Barbara more than anybody I know. And it came out to me in a very special way. When I first came to the news press, I just moved from Colorado, land of cold, snow, miserable weather. And here I was in California. And I remember it was a winter day. And it was one of those days in Santa Barbara that, for some reason it was 72 degrees in the middle of the winter. And I was in the newsroom and Barney came in and he had on one of those Hawaii shirts that he used to wear. And he said, "So Jane, how does it feel to be living here in paradise?" And I had no words for that because at that point I thought, I'm never leaving this place, ever. I'm never going back to Colorado and snow and cold, and I'm here for good. The other thing I remember about Barney is I had the joy of putting out the Fiesta supplement every year. And I couldn't have gotten through it without Barney's institutional memory of everything that's ever happened in Fiesta. He was just amazing. And when I think about I don't know how many thousand stories, Cammy, you mentioned that he wrote. I mean, how does anybody do that? I mean, I certainly couldn't. It's just incredible. And the last thing I have to say is when I first got here, I thought he had the most amazing hair. I thought he was very dashing. That's it.
All right. Thanks, Jane. Speaking of amazing hair, Scott Hadley,
Somehow I knew you were going to do that. And I'm going to
never one to miss a
I'm going to
chance.
file a complaint with Yolanda, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. Yolanda couldn't make it today, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you could have filled up many screens of people who work with Barney over the years. And I'm thinking of people that preceded me at the news press who were just great journalists who also admired him. Um, to be honest, initially, he's such a nice guy, but I did not connect with him. But Cammy, you mentioned Sue, and Sue was my in with Barney. I love Sue. I loved Sue, excuse me. And part of that is my obsession with looking back at what's been covered before. I still feel dread about all the lost clips that were up in the attic. I don't know if you guys ever went up there, but I used to go up there and go through stuff, and it was just like, oh my God, this stuff is falling apart. It's so amazing. And just like Cammy said, you find these, reports from the early 60s in which he was writing. And the news press at the time was such a vibrant. I mean, think about this. This is right after, all that John Birch stuff they were doing. And again, like punching way above their weight. And we had that experience ourselves when we were there. Um, but I think the thing that in looking at him, I think he would agree that he just lived this charmed life. I don't think that any journalist living now could replicate what he was able to do. A career over that amount of time in a place that he loved. I mean, he could have, you know how journalism is, it's very peripatetic. You kind of move up or out kind of thing. And he stayed at this place that he loved, which I share with him a lot. And I think each of you do. Like, just Santa Barbara is so incredible. And uh, and I feel lucky that he shared that with us. And I did get a chance to cruise Fiesta with him, which was probably the epitome of Barney, because he knew everybody. He knew the right places to go for the right food. It was insane how much he could eat because he wasn't like that big of a guy. And I think I tapped out like after two or three, sessions of going to get goat tacos or whatever. Um, I also, he could have retired and stopped doing what he did when the blow up at the news press happened, and he could have still said, I had this great career. And he chose to keep doing what he did, and doing it really interestingly, right? And being willing to, for one thing, he was so nice and kind in his writing, but he also could be pointed. And I think we saw that a lot in the stuff that he contributed to the Independent. Um, anyway, I feel sad, but at the same time, happy to be able to reflect on this guy who had such a full career in life, beautiful family. He found love again later in life, with someone who was wonderful. I'm sure he went through many tragedies, but my God, what a accomplished person he was. And um, yeah, I have a lot of admiration for him and what he did.
Very nice, Scott. Thank you so much. Norah Wallace, she's brought along her imaginary friends, the Farquhars, I'm told.
The Farquhars. Okay, I'll get to that. So I just want to say that, I was a paper girl for the Santa Barbara News Press when I was 12. And before I delivered it in the afternoons after school, I would sit and read the paper, and I always remember names like Barney's. And so when I got hired and started at the News Press as a very wet behind the ears reporter 4 days after college graduation, I walked into the newsroom and I wanted to throw up because I was so nervous. I wore like this 1980s suit with shoulder pads, and it was a New York Times regional paper, and it was just the epitome of my lifelong dream at the age of 24 or something. And Barney walks up to me and introduces himself as Joe Terror, who was the publisher at that time. He goes, I'm Joe Terror. And I looked at it and I'm like, I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. You can't pass that off as a joke, but it was such a a relief of just anxiety to have someone like that actually speak to me in a newsroom. You know, you'd expect for him never to even pay attention to somebody so young. But I also remember talking to him a lot about Chicago because I lived in Chicago as a child and my mom was born there, and so we had fun discussions about the L and all that fun stuff. And then when I started covering Santa Barbara City Hall, Barney took me around, and he didn't introduce me to the mayor and the city council. He introduced me to the secretaries and the janitor, and the people that knew really what was going on at City Hall and made a difference in reporting, because it was little people, not big people, that mattered a lot to Barney. And I'll never forget that. That was just such a touching introduction for me. And then the Farquhars, or whatever their names were. So during Fiesta, I hated Barney because he got fun stories and we had to try and find news out of Fiesta, which was just miserable, just every year, the damn La Bamba. And but I remember being crushed when I found out that Barney and his cohorts had made up a family who came to Santa Barbara as tourists during Fiesta every single year. And I'm sorry, I can't remember if they were from like Wisconsin or Minnesota, but somewhere just, milk and, good old fashioned values kind of people. And they came every year to Fiesta, and every single year Barney would quote them in a story. And they were like the McQuarfars or the Farquhars. And I'm hoping Tom Bolton remembers, but and I remember being mildly disappointed and really, really impressed with Barney that he could carry that off. So such beautiful memories. And then just obviously just envious of the love he had for Sue. And just such a beautiful story for him and them. And then his column when she passed remains one of the top, like probably 5 most heartbreaking things I've ever read in my life. So Barney.
Oh, lovely.
Nice seeing all of you. Great comments, everybody. I would start crying. I'm so touched by everything. So I better get going. But thank you, Jerry, for doing this. Take care.
Bye, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Beautiful words, Nora. Although I got to say, this is the first time I'm learning that he made people up to put.
just that family, and only Fiesta.
Hey, Len Wood, what do you? Good to see you from the far off, mysterious North Bay. What's going on?
Here I am. Yeah, I had the kind of weird distinction of I started the news press just about the same time that Barney was starting his column. So I brought some sort of other knowledge from his predecessor, Tom Cleveland, who wrote that column beforehand. It wasn't Off the Beat. It was something else, somebody with TK or something like that. And I just remember the first time I met Barney thinking, you'll never fill Tom Cleveland's shoes. So I was dreadfully wrong on that one. But Barney had a really nice take that as a young journalist I really wasn't used to. I was used to real hard questions. I'd be this photographer, like, off in the wings, listening to reporters ask really difficult questions, really pointed stuff at sources and stuff like that. But Barney always had this really conversational take that I didn't understand at first. He was really able to just talk to people, and he talked to everyone the same exact way, whether they were big shots or nobodies, all the same thing. And it was always sort of like he was listening, and he wouldn't comment on anything there. He wouldn't try to drive the conversation out. He just listened to people. So I learned a lot from that. So the one more deal with that too, my predecessor, Ray Borges, who was a great photographer and also a big lover of Fiesta, he and Barney would sort of team up on stuff, and they had the famous, I guess they roller skated their way through the Fiesta parade one time. I guess I was 18 at the time when I was first around all these guys. And I just realized, you can be fun and do this job and still, appreciate life and all that stuff. So I took a lot from Barney and Ray on that, just their general approach on things like that. So that was cool. One of the thing nobody's mentioned yet, I can't believe, the hours that he would try to explain the push button transmission on his the Prince Valiant, his old that old beater of a car that we drive around in and do interviews. We did man on the street type of stuff and things like that, and just other things. But I never got it, which I guess that was good for me. But I miss Barney a lot, and he was a great influence on me and just his whole approach.
Oh, thank you so much, Len. I keep learning all these things. Len and Barney started at the same time. Barney was 93. Len, you don't look a day over 90. I got to say.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yep. He got a head start on me. That was my first deal.
Linda.
Well, I was just thinking how great it is to be together here and how much I miss you, all of you, because it's really hard to just be out in the wilderness, kind of, producing stuff on your own. It's really nice to have a newsroom. And Barney was just the heart of the newsroom. I was in awe of him again for his prolific work. He just every day coming out with a story and a real style and flair that seemed to come so easy to him. It was remarkable. I think also I think about his career, and I'm just kind of envious of it because he had such a long career for a long time with publishers. A publisher, Thomas Stork, who was a man of the community and really cared about the community, about the beloved community. And Barney exemplified that. And Thomas Stork, every day with an editorial a fierce editorial about this semi-secret national group called the hate group called the John Birch Society. And it really, those editorials catapulted Stork, but also Santa Barbara to national attention. It's hard to imagine this today. And Barney was there for that and had such a long career until, like all of us, he couldn't have a career there anymore because, carpetbagger, billionaire people came into not only the news press, but all these other publications around the country. And so I think Barney was very lucky. And no one's mentioned how he used to be auctioned off at fundraisers for a date. He was a before he met Sue, he was very eligible. An eligible bachelor, handsome guy. Everybody knew him, and yeah, he would be at those fundraisers. And a small story about Barney that I remember is I visited them at their house in Eucalyptus Hill, and they showed me their special sofa. It was in the garage, and it faced out to the street, and they would roll up the garage door and sit on the sofa, and then people would just come by and they would talk to their neighbors. And I thought of them as people who loved to travel around the world, but they were really pretty much homebodies. And that was Barney. He was the beloved community, and he helped create the things that make Santa Barbara is so special, the participation in the community by so many people to make it what it is. And Barney was just the best of the best.
Yeah. Very nice.
Listen.
Right. Very nice, Melinda. Thank you. And John Zant, you've been going your whole life. You've been going live. I was thinking about this. You're a Z, man. It's like homeroom. Oh yeah, and John Zant.
Yeah.
But
I'm easy to find on lists and things. So,
think of it as you're batting cleanup here at Z. So what do you got? You work.
There's something called alphabetical neurosis. That's about the anxiety you feel while diplomas are being handed out and everything. Are they going to get to me? Are they going to remember me? Anyway, well, Barney was a fortunate guy who was at the start of the alphabet. I started the news press in 1968, and he'd already been there for most of that decade. And from the start, he was just a newsman's newsman. I'll always connect him nostalgically to the era of print. The ink-stained wretches um, that labored in the newsrooms and waiting for the press to roll, and that was a different area in Barney's passing. Sort of to me, almost represented something about the end of print journalism, because when he left the news press, he went right to the Independent, which still had a printed edition every week. And one of the best things he ever wrote that I've kept forever is this story, Why I Quit the News Press. And as typical great writing, he gave a great blow-by-blow account of what went down in July of 2006. But I go back way before that. I remember in the 70s, Barney was a rather vigorous young man. He and Keith Dalton got us the news press in a softball games against the police department. And Barney could really, he was a line drive hitter. And I could not believe he was, more than 10 years older than I was. Because he was one of the leaders out of our softball team, and I think we whipped the police department a few times. I did start to worry about Barney's health when he was eating his way through El Mercado. He could really chow down on all those enchiladas and tortas and tacos. I have to correct the record about the fiesta. I can understand Norah feeling, because of Barney's antics, that this fictional family, the Farquhars, was his creation. But the credit should go to John Dell, another departed news presser. And every year John would be out and doing color stories during the fiesta. And the Farquhars were a family that came down from Canada every year.
Canada, oh.
He quoted them and how much they loved the Santa Barbara fiesta. So
that's wonderful to hear.
That was it's so fun to see all of you guys, and and remembering people like John Dell who were in the newsroom and made it the energetic place it was. And I last saw Barney a few times at Vices and Spices coffee shop. I think he ended up in the San Roque neighborhood, but too long ago, I think, was the last time I saw him there. I guess he wasn't showing up with a sign of things. Anyway, I'll miss him, and I miss a whole era of journalism that was going on when we were all ink-stained wretches.
Nice job. Nice job, Z. Very nice. All right. Well, listen, thank you, everybody. I put down some words about Barney the other day, but I saw him for coffee over the last few years, that we'd go out every now and again, and every single time I went out, he goes, "You hear anything about anybody buying the news press? I think you could buy it, and you could go back and be the editor, and he never gave up on the idea that we were all going to be back again in that place. But everything that happened, and Melinda has alluded to it in beginning in 2006. I mean, it was because Barney quit. Nobody cared about a bunch of editors quitting. But when Barney quit, it just called attention to what was going on. And I'm not going to revisit that today, but just to say, at a time we're all living through, there is so much cowardice out there and people being afraid to stand up to bullies, and the courage that he displayed and that he showed, knowing that he was dealing with a vindictive person. And it's just remarkable, and it's remarkable today to me. And I'm still very, very grateful for what he did. And I'm grateful for his friendship. And thank you all for taking the time to do this. And we'll put this out there so other folks can maybe who didn't know Barney as well, get a sense of what a great person he really was. Thank you all.